Good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome to our February microburst. We are very pleased this month to be joined by Tom Jenkins. Many of you will know Tom is the co-founder and CEO of PetsApp. And Tom is going to be talking to us this month about something really interesting, this concept of customer lifetime value. So one of the things that we look at as leaders, as managers, in terms of understanding our client base better. And this is one of the ways that we can do that. So Tom is going to talk us through how we do it, how we calculate it, and then how we can use it as well. What kind of we do with the information that we can gain. So, Tom, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thanks very much. Thank you. And just to apologise in advance for any sniffling. The temperatures have dropped here in Minnesota, so everyone's been struck with the traditional winter cold. But with that qualifier, let's dive in, because I think this is a really valuable, essential way to understand the structure of a veterinary clinic as a business. And one thing here, just to say, we're calling this customer lifetime value. I know we prefer to talk about consumers in veterinary clinics as clients. I've used customer lifetime value because if you Google that term, if you're asking ChatGPT about that term, that's the term that is used, that has the most literature around it. But if you want to substitute client in there when you're talking about this with your teams, that's fair enough with me. So I thought we would dive straight in into an understanding of how to calculate customer lifetime value, because we can talk about these things conceptually, but also this is a North Star metric. This is something that you can measure over time and improve over time. You have levers by which you can improve your customer lifetime value. So what is customer lifetime value? It's the value of a customer to your business over the lifetime of them transacting with you. You know, no one's going to be a customer forever, so they will have a lifetime, and during that lifetime, they will transact with you, and the sum of those transactions will have a value. The maths that I'm going to take you through here is a simplified calculation of customer lifetime value, because we will be ignoring the time value of money. Now, the time value of money is just saying that £10 today is worth more to you than £10 in a week's time, or a year's time, or 7 years' time. So what we should really do is, because some of the value of the customer is quite far out in the future, we should discount that revenue stream based on the time value of money, if that makes sense. But as long as you know you're not doing that, as long as you know the simplification that you've made, I think this is fine. Using the simplified version is fine. But if you discuss this with an accountant, they might start mentioning time value of money. I just don't want you to get confused there. So the customer lifetime value, that will be measured in currency, so in pounds, is equal to the average customer lifetime, measured in years, how many years that customer is going to stay with you, multiplied by the average customer value per year. Okay. And again, another thing to pull out here, you can do this on the client level, or you can do this on the patient level, or both. That can be useful to look at as well. Okay, but how do you calculate the average annual customer value of a client? So that would be in pounds per year. Well, that's your average transaction value, the average amount that they spend with you each time they transact with you, multiplied by the transaction frequency. How many times do they transact with you per year? All right. Now, this is the trickier one, is how do you calculate the average customer lifetime? How do you know how long the average customer is going to transact with you? And we're going to measure that in years. You could measure it in months or weeks, but years is most appropriate to the veterinary context. So this is equal to 1 divided by your customer churn. What is the rate at which you churn through clients? So what is the rate at which clients are leaving your business? So how do we calculate that? Well, your customer churn, the rate at which clients are leaving your business, is going to be equal to the active clients at the start of the year minus the number still active at the end of the year. So this is something called a cohort. We're going to take a cohort of customers from the start of the year, and we're going to look how many of that same cohort are still active at the end of the year. It is not your active client numbers at the start of the year minus your active client numbers at the end of the year, because you may have added new clients. it's not those new clients that we're interested in for this calculation. It's the number of clients you had at the start of the year and how many of those same clients are still active at the end of the year. Right? Subtracting that number will tell you how many customers have left. Divide that by the number of active clients you had at the start of the year, and you'll get a customer churn percentage. We'll do a worked example with this, and it'll start to make more sense when we add in real numbers. So customer lifetime value is equal to the average customer lifetime in years multiplied by the average customer value per year. So let's take an example. If we had 3,000 active clients at the start of the year and 2,700 of those clients remained active at the end of the year, we have churned 300 clients. We divide that by the number of customers active at the start of the year, 3,000. 300 over 3,000 is going to be 10%. So this example, we have 10% customer churn. So then to calculate the average customer lifetime, this isn't intuitive for everyone, but this is just how it works. Average customer lifetime is going to be 1 over that customer churn rate expressed as a decimal. So 10% as a decimal is 0.1. So 1 over 0.1 is going to give you 10 years. If you are churning 10% of your client base each year, that means in 10 years, you will churn through the whole of your customer base on average, right? The average customer lifetime is going to be 10 years. And this is the bit that most people get stuck on. If you can remember this, actually calculating your average customer lifetime value becomes relatively straightforward. If you churn through half your, you started with 3,000 active clients and you only retained 1,500 of them, that means you churn through 1,500 clients. Your churn rate would be 50% and your average customer lifetime would be 2 years. That would be extraordinarily low in a veterinary clinic, but it does happen in some locations. For example, if you're serving an expat population, they tend to cycle quite often. So your customer lifetime value might be lower, or your customer lifetime at least might be lower. So then what's our average annual value of the customer? Well, we're taking our average transaction value. I just put £200 in here to make it relatively easy to calculate. I've said that there'll be an average of 2.2 transactions per year on average. And so we get to an average customer value of £440. That's just £200 times 2.2 times 2.2. And so then what's our average customer lifetime value? Well, our average customer lifetime was 10 years. Our average value of that customer per year was 440. 440 spent every year for 10 years is going to be £4,400. And so your average customer lifetime value is £4,400. I think you're fine to stop there. As long as you know that you're using a simplified calculation and you always do the calculation in the same simplified way, you'll still have an apples to apples comparison. And so I think you're fine. For those of you that really do want to geek out, there are net present value calculators on the internet. And when I put that in there, I found that the net present value of £4,400, assuming a 7% interest rate, is actually £3,090. So there I've discounted for the time value of money. And so the value of a customer to this clinic is going to today, the value of that customer today is going to be £3,090. But again, I wouldn't worry about going that far unless you're trained in accounting. I wouldn't worry about going that far. And so luckily this is all recorded, so you can go back and watch that as many times as it takes. And I would start putting in real numbers, work through that side by side with me, putting in real numbers to get to your average customer lifetime value. We do have a calculator on petsapp.com/CLV, and you can just put your numbers in there and it will do a lot of the calculations for you. So hopefully that's a useful tool. And then once you've got your number, the next thing you want to think about beyond just calculating it once, that number in isolation doesn't make a whole lot of sense. What we want to do now is look at, well, how can we increase the average lifetime value of a customer? And there are three main levers. Improve your client retention, so reduce the rate at which you're churning through clients. Improve the average transaction value. Improve the visit frequency. So have them visit you more often, have them spend more with you on each visit, have them stay with you for a longer lifetime. And so the questions you're going to be asking yourself is, how many opportunities will you have to advocate for your client's patients, and over how long, right? And how effective will you be in advocating for those patients? This is where you start thinking about concepts like concordance and adherence. So concordance is when you get an opportunity to advocate for a patient, does the owner, does the pet parent, do they agree with your recommendation? I really think you should be doing a dental for Fluffy. Oh yeah, I agree. Okay, but the next thing is, do they adhere to the recommendation? I know I should exercise more often. I concord with that recommendation from my doctor. I don't adhere to it, right? So there's this gap between concordance and adherence. I'm trying, but it's the same with medication, right? They paid for the medication, they're taking the medication home, they agree that it would be a good idea to give that medication. Do they adhere? Maybe other things, they get busy and other things get in the way. Maybe the formulation of the medication doesn't make it easy to adhere, even if they agree that it would be a good idea. Same with recommendations around brushing your pet's teeth. A lot of people can see that, I brush my own teeth twice a day. Perhaps I should be brushing my own teeth, my pet's teeth. I can see that's logical, but do I adhere to it? The minority, as we know, would adhere to that advice. So when we're thinking about this, how many opportunities will you have to advocate for your patients and how long? In terms of visit frequency, one thing that we need to think about is, well, what are we trying to get? Are we trying to get footfall? Are we actually trying to get people into our physical premises? Or are we competing for eyeballs? There's been a lot of talk, about eyeballs and clickbait and all this sort of thing. And this, another way of framing this is the offline versus online. And with a physical veterinary premises, that comes with a cost, and you want to get people physically into that premises. And then there's upsell opportunities, or actually there's a lot of digital disruptors coming along who are competing for eyeballs. And if we're not there, if we're not seen in these online touch points, then we'll be missed. So which one is more important? And I'd put that question to anyone watching: is which one do you think is more important? And for me, I think the answer is neither and both. It's not actually footfall or eyeballs that we're fighting for here, is it? To paraphrase Bill Clinton's campaign strategist, he said it's the economy, stupid. I would say it's the patient, right? It's advocating for our patient in whatever way makes the most sense in that moment. And so we're looking for these patient advocacy opportunities, whether they come in online or offline, whether it's just dispensing some digital reassurance or beginning the top of the funnel, where actually this is going to be a long journey into a dental for that patient, or it's a physical touch point. Veterinary clinics are the only businesses placed to offer this joined up online to offline experience. And embracing that online to offline experience, we create touch points that give us more opportunities to retain clients, to advocate for our patients. And in advocating for those patients, we will increase visit frequency and we will increase average transaction value. And it becomes something of a virtuous cycle. These three levers of cost and lifetime value, when you're looking at average spend, average visit frequency, client retention, they are not independent variables. They each feed into each other such that you can get these virtuous loops, as you can see here. The more you look, the more you find. The more you look, the better you can advocate for your patients. In advocating for your patients, you find other things. So you do the blood screening, you find an opportunity to advocate for that patient's renal health, etc., etc. We know how this goes. So you can create this virtuous flywheel effect, which is a big part of why we're all in this profession, across the veterinary professions in this sector, is we know you can do well by doing good. And these are the sorts of virtuous cycles that, by taking this customer lifetime value lens, we can actually tease out. And I think I would encourage you to think of your business as a funnel. A lot of the time we talk about funnels in marketing when we're talking about marketing strategies, but I think you can think of your whole business as a system of inputs and outcomes, inputs and outputs. So you get the inputs at the top of the funnel and then what comes out the bottom. And the input for your average practice are those 3,000 active patients per year. And then for those 3,000 active patients, you will make some recommendations. So what percentage of those 3,000 active patients will you recommend a dental to? What percentage will agree with that recommendation? and what percentage will actually do it. So you've got your percent recommendation, your percent concordance, and your percent adherence. You might have heard adherence referred to as compliance. For me, compliance, I think I've always felt that's a little bit Borgy, you know, for people that aren't Star Trek fans out there, a little bit robotic, whereas adherence is maybe a nicer way to reflect the actual dynamic between vet, owner, and patient. And so I'm trying to move my vocabulary from compliance to adherence. And then in moving down this journey from recommended to agree to doing, we actually generate outcomes. And those outcomes can be patient outcomes, financial outcomes, team outcomes, client outcomes, community outcomes. Any stakeholder that is affected by your business, you'll generate some form of outcomes for them. And so then when I think about those 3,000 active patients, I find it super helpful. And maybe you'll think differently to me. I find it helpful to sort of break that down into a level of granularity. And so if we do some quick maths, we find that those 3,000 active patients represent 3 millennia of parasite prevention, parasite control, 54,000 nails to trim or to get trodden on or caught on a woolly jumper. That's 3,550 liters of blood to sample. At that point, we're talking complete exsanguination, so probably don't go that far. It's 420,000 liters of urine. That's enough to fill a pool. 111,600 teeth to scale, polish, extract, or get bitten by, 200 tons of feces to sample, 6,000 kidneys to keep healthy, and 853,800 bones to keep intact. And for any sticklers out there, I have had people come to me and try and challenge some of these numbers. I've assumed a 60% canine, 40% feline ratio in these numbers, so you can run the maths and let me know how I've done. But I think thinking about it at that level of granularity, that is really the inputs of the system, right? And it is what these are biological systems, and what advocacy opportunities exist for us to keep these biological systems functioning well. How is our business system going to do best by those biological systems? And so as we feed those in, there are these percentage probabilities. As we interact with these patients, what is the probability that they're going to leave with having had blood pressure taken? Excuse me. What's the probability that that patient is going to get a dental done that month, that year, that week, that day? And so based on these probabilities, you might have, you might have 3 millennia of parasite prevention opportunities, but you might actually do 750 years of flea prevention, let's say, or 210 scale and polishes, 800 blood tests, 10 repaired cycles, that sort of thing. But you want to know, right? You want to look at how many dentals have I done, and how many patients have I seen, to have the business term would be like your dental penetration, the product penetration. What percent of patients coming through our doors leave with this product or service having been delivered? And as I say, you can do this for blood screening, prescription diets, blood pressure, whatever is important to you and your team in terms of how you wish to advocate for your patients. I'm not trying to do a webinar on what the preventive medicine recommendations should be. I think there are better experts out there than me. You can start with the American Animal Hospital Association guidance is pretty good as a starting point for conversations with your team about where you should set your recommendations. And then, okay, once you have this idea of what you want to focus on, it's how can we improve the chances? How can we improve the penetration of these products and services? Well, we can use things like reminders, wellness plans, online booking, loyalty plans, template messages. Pets Up Copilot is an AI tool that will help recommend responses to pet owners, making things more convenient through asynchronous communications. So increasing the number of opportunities to advocate for patients. The other thing I would do is, I think most of us, this follows on from what I was just saying, most of us have a box of items that we would recommend for almost any patient, right? So for a healthy cat or a dog, I'm going to be recommending regular physical examinations, probably some set of vaccinations, right? Blood screening. So I've got a reference database for that patient, and I'm checking for preclinical disease, urine screening, fecal screening, parasite control, tailoring that parasite prevention, potentially dentistry is an important one, blood pressure, etc. But as I say, I'm not here to give you a list of recommendations, but most of us will have a set of recommendations that we would make for the vast majority of patients that we would find relatively uncontroversial. And so that's our default patient advocacy box, right? And then we've got to think about, well, what's our patient advocacy toolkit? What toolkit are we providing to our teams to make sure that clients not only concord, not only agree with those recommendations, but actually adhere to those recommendations? And here you can lock in compliance prospectively. Someone can say, well, I agree that I will do these things over the course of the year to come. Or you can gamify, you can encourage compliance on a sort of ongoing basis retrospectively. And the way I think about doing this is through subscriptions, like a wellness plan, or through loyalty. And let me describe what I mean by the prospective and retrospective. So the prospective compliance would be with a wellness plan or a subscription. We're saying that here's the box of items your veterinary professional is recommending for this patient. And if you agree with me today, I'm going to make it super easy for you to adhere by allowing you to spread the cost monthly and potentially offering a discount or some extra benefits. A lot of people are bundling in unlimited consults to increase the amount of patient advocacy opportunities they have over the course of that year. And so this locks in adherence and compliance to your patient advocacy recommendations prospectively over the year to come. But not everyone is going to opt in. Even if you offer a wellness plan, not everyone is going to opt in necessarily, unless you're a membership clinic and you require them to opt in. So for those that aren't ready to opt into a wellness plan today, what you can say is actually what I'll do is I'll reward you retrospectively for compliance. So if you do each of these things in my box of things that I'm recommending for your patient, I'll unlock certain rewards for you. So as soon as you come into compliance with this box of items, I'll track that compliance automatically and reward points, loyalty points for that compliance. And that'll unlock other rewards like a free nail trim or a discount on a dental to nudge you into another level of compliance. And in these ways, we can actually create this rising watermark of customer lifetime value and through improving patient advocacy. That's the idea, is to try and give your team tools through which they can be more effective in the things they're already advocating for their patients. This is not about getting people to recommend things that a pet doesn't need or recommend things they wouldn't otherwise recommend. It's, we make the recommendation. Once we make that recommendation, I'm not sure our job is done at that point. I never felt that way when I was practicing as a vet. I made the recommendation because I really wanted the pet to benefit from that recommendation. So until the client is adhering to that recommendation, that patient has not benefited from your expertise. And so if we can layer on tools that increases the likelihood that your recommendation will translate into client adherence with that recommendation, that can only be a good thing. And guess what? It happens to be good for business as well. And the other thing you can do is, us vets are not the best at making recommendations always. I mean, does this sound familiar at all, where it's like you lift up the lip of a dog that's got just absolute hooching breasts, terrible teeth, needed a dental 3 years ago, and you say, I wonder if we've got the self-awareness to realize this. But I've been in the consults. I've been guilty of this, and I've done a lot of coaching on consults over the years, where you lift up the lip and you say, you should maybe start to potentially perhaps thinking about considering getting a dental for your dog, right? And what you mean is like they needed a dental yesterday or, longer than that ago. The problem with that is the owner then says yes, and you think, job done. But the owner is saying, yes, I will maybe start to potentially considering thinking about getting a dental for my dog. And this happens year after year, and that dog never gets a dental. And we're busy and it's difficult, and we're not, commercially oriented people or salespeople. And so some of us can be a bit shy about making the recommendation stronger, or even if we make a strong recommendation, it might be one of 3 or 4 things that we've said in that consult and we don't have enough time to follow up on it. So introducing some tech touch, this is what we're talking about, whether it's footfall or eyeballs. No, it's the patient. Introducing some tech touch patient advocacy contact points like nudges, push notifications, SMS, text, emails, that sort of thing, to say, look, your vet recommended a dental for Ziggy. Here's why it's important. Would you like to chat with someone to get that booked in now? Or do you have any questions for us? Or would you like to watch this video on why that's important? Or would you like to watch this video on another patient going through that patient journey and how it's benefited them? These are things that we would love to be able to do in the consult, but we can't in a 10-minute consult, 15-minute consult, whatever it might be. we don't have the time to go into all that, but let's use technology to augment our patient advocacy efforts. And you can achieve incredible things when you start to layer on these touch points. So you can see an increase in top line revenue, but also you can see here the really interesting thing in terms of what are the levers on customer lifetime value. You can see here a 40% decrease in health plan cancellations. What does it mean if you get a decrease in cancellations? It means an increase in lifetime, right? Average customer lifetime is increased, and so that increases customer lifetime value. So you've got to think about each of those levers and how they interact with each other. Increase your average transaction value, increase your transaction frequency, and increase the retention of your existing customers. Doing that, you'll be able to optimize your customer lifetime value. So I would encourage you straight away, calculate this. The numbers will be available to you. If you're struggling with it at all, I'm enough of a geek with all this stuff that if you reach out to me, I'd be delighted to help you with it. And then just keep calculating it. You know, this won't move radically day by day, but it is the sort of thing you want to keep an eye on monthly and just see, you know, has it improved? Has it got worse? If it's improved or gotten worse, why? Which lever has gone down and which has gone up? And I think at that point, I'd be happy to take any questions. I know that was quite a lot to take in, but hopefully it was helpful. And as we say, it's recorded, so you can always rewatch it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tom. Like you said, that's really interesting stuff. A fair amount of maths there, but yeah. If anybody wants to sort of revisit, then it is there. So we've got a few questions. I've just popped the link for the calculator on the PetSat website. So if anybody wants a sort of a guided tour through calculating their own figures, then that's available there. A couple of these questions I think you might have actually answered already. So for example, this one around guessing how long someone will be a client. You've actually demonstrated how to actually calculate that using your actual practice data.
Yeah, and it depends on how much data you have, right? So even if you don't have a year's worth of data, you can, if you think you have a representative month, you can extrapolate from a month.
Right.
That would be fine too. And I again, just reach out and I'm happy to show you how to do these things. Once you know, and then you can do it for yourself as often as you like. Do have a look at their website, because again, that takes some of the maths out of it. It's just inputting their numbers at that point.
Yeah, fantastic. A question around sort of the difference between customer lifetime value and then calculating, or the average transaction value, ATV, actually goes into part of the calculation for customer lifetime value, isn't it? Customer lifetime value is looking much more long term.
Yes, and more balanced, I would say. So whenever you are looking at a key performance indicator, a KPI, and deciding, is this going to be beneficial to my view of my business? You want to construct a balanced scorecard of those key performance indicators, because any one key performance indicator may lead you astray. Even customer lifetime value is not enough on its own. I think it does a pretty robust job, but it's not enough on its own because it's not considering new customers, for example, the rate of new customer acquisition. But certainly average transaction value on its own can create perverse incentives. So if you try to orientate your whole business around optimizing average transaction value, if every time a pet owner comes in, they're going to be hit with a £1,000 bill, they're probably going to transact with you less and maybe more likely to churn. So you're not optimizing for customer lifetime value, but only considering average transaction value. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. It kind of leads to a slightly geeky question. So you're talking about how keen you are on the maths, and we're talking about the possibility of allowing for future value of money and that kind of thing. Are there any subtleties around the kind of the value of a particular client or a particular patient going up as a patient ages? Because naturally, over the lifetime of somebody with you, then
this is really important. I'm glad for that question. So it tends to be that the peak value of a patient during their lifetime comes in around 7 years, and this is really important for us right now to understand, because we had that pandemic puppy boom, and then things have started just to ease off a little bit in the veterinary sector, but we should see a second peak around as those puppies hit that around 7 years. This isn't hard data, but around that 7 years, and so we should be prepared for that. But also during the pandemic, what we saw is a lot of people closing their books to new clients. And so if you've done that and your average patient has aged, beyond that 7-year peak value, you might see some downstream consequences of closing your books. And so I think one takeaway from that is try not to close your books if at all possible. I know we had to take emergency measures and people were incredibly stretched, so I'm not trying to downplay that. I'm just saying, if you're going to do that, be aware of this concept of customer lifetime value and the concept of where that customer lifetime value peaks. There's a smaller peak sort of in the puppy kitten area, and then this peak as they sort of become older pets. And that's important to be aware of, because that will determine, you can almost look at a veterinary business and predict where it's going to be in 7 years if you have a good enough grip on customer lifetime value.
Right. No, that's really interesting. Thank you. I just wondered what the nuances of that might be. I'm aware of time, but perhaps one more question sort of from the floor, one from a LinkedIn Live viewer. So once you've calculated this number, again, talking about how we use it, have you got a guideline or suggestion about then what you invest that kind of value back into attracting new clients?
I think how you use it is looking at these 3 levers, is looking at average transaction value. Where do you think that is high, low? Looking at your average customer lifetime, is that high, low? Looking at the number of transactions, is that too high, too low? Having an opinion on that is difficult. And that's why I come into thinking about, let's take something like dentistry. If you look at the number of dentals, the probability that an active patient in a given month received a dental, right? It might be 3%, it might be 7%. And then have a conversation as a team and say, do we think we do too many dentals or not enough dentals? And then just think, how can I move the lever on that one thing, this one patient advocacy opportunity? And that could be CPD, it could be team training, a team evening together, and coincide that with some client marketing so that clients are primed to proactively ask about these questions, but your team are not being thrown under the bus. They're prepared with the right support to have those conversations. Populate template messages, all this sort of good stuff. Have reminders, digital nudges set up, and that will increase the penetration of dentistry. And then look back and see, well, what did that do for my customer lifetime value? Okay, my customer lifetime value has gone up as my dental penetration has gone up. Why is that? Oh, it seems to be that average customer lifetime has stayed about the same, but the average transaction value has increased, or transaction frequency has increased. And then you start understanding how this all ties together. And then do it for the next thing, blood screening. Are we doing too many blood screenings or not enough blood screenings? And that's the beautiful thing about being in veterinary medicine, is in general, our patients are underserved healthcare consumers. So there's no need or no incentive, no motivation to sell them things that they wouldn't otherwise need. There's plenty of things that they would benefit from, that the compliance with that, I should say adherence with that, is not as high as we would like it to be. And we work on that and then see how that translates into this customer lifetime value metric.
Okay, lovely. Thanks very much, Will, for your question there. And we're out of time, so I think we might have to leave it there. Tom is, as you said, happy to answer questions. Do send him some maths. Go on, give him some maths homework to do. I'm sure he'll be absolutely thrilled to bits. But Tom's email address up on the screen there and on the banner, so do get in touch. Our next microburst session will be next month. That will be in March. We're going to be looking at optimizing payment options using direct debits. That will be with London and Zurich. So that will be on Thursday, the 14th of March. So look out for information on the socials about that. But thank you very much, Tom. Lovely to have you. As always. Thank you for giving us some things to think about. Thanks everybody for watching, whether you're live or watching back again. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you next month. Thanks ever so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.